In exercise 2521, we're going to have a net present value of unequal lives. And so in this one, we have Bunker Hill Mining Company has two different proposals. They can do a processing mill or an electric shovel. Both pieces of equipment cost $750,000, and then it gives us the net cash flows for each project. So different lifespan, different cash flows. So the estimated residual value of the processing mill at the end of year 4 is $280,000. And we need to determine, hey, what is the better deal? Take that off for the time being here. So to do this, probably the best way to go about it is to compare them with equal lives. And since it gives us what the value of the processing mill at the end of year 4, we can what we can do is we can compare the first 4 years of cash flows of each project plus assume that they sell the processing mill at the end of year 4. So let's just go ahead and start with our table. So we're going to do 4 years of cash flows. And then we need to calculate our present value factor, either grab it from the book, or we can use Excel to calculate the present value factor for us. And so that's going to be the present value function. And we plug in the interest rate, and I'm going to use the absolute reference to lock that down because we're going to drag it down. Number of periods, we're going to reference the current year that we're in. We're not looking at payments, we're looking at future value. So we're going to skip the payment, and then we're going to do a negative $1 for the future. So that's going to give us a present value factor of 0.87. So now what we can do is we can just drag that down, and that'll just change the cell reference to the year and give us the different present value factors for each year. Now I want to plug in our cash flows. So we have 310 in year 1 for the processing mill, 260,000 in year 2, 3, and 4. And then what we have for the processing mills, they're going to sell it in year 4. So we'll go ahead and give this another year 4, and they're going to sell it for 280,000. Now we can figure out the present value of the cash flow, so we just multiply our factor times the cash flow for each year. And that will give us net cash flows of $945,864. Then to get our present value, we just want to subtract out our initial investment, which is going to be $750,000, which will give us a net present value of $195,864. All right, let's go down and do the same thing for the electric shovel. So for the electric shovel, it's going to be 4 years. We're going to ignore this last line because there's no residual value. We're not going to sell anything at the end of year 4. Let's figure out our present value. So that's going to be a rate of 15%. Use the absolute reference. For our number of periods, we're going to reference the year that we're in. No payment, but a future value of negative $1. And so then that gives us our present value factors. Now we enter in the cash flows for the electric shovel. So we have 330,000, 325,000, 325 again, and then 320,000. Multiply our factor times our cash flow. Add them up. We're going to have cash flows of $929,357. Subtract out our initial investment, and we're going to have a net present value of $179,357. So by looking at this, we're going to have, looks like it's going to be a better deal to go with the processing mill. That's going to give us a higher net present value over the 4 years. So it looks like that is the better investment. We can do this another way. That's using the net present value function in Excel, which is a really handy tool. For that, the function is NPV, and so we just reference our rate, and then instead of calculating the net present values for each year, Excel's going to do that for us. So all we do is we just grab the range of cash flows, and so what that does is that knows as you're grabbing these to say, hey, the first one is year 1, the second one is year 2, the third one is year 3, and so on. So it really takes a lot of the work out of doing all these present value functions. And so then we just close the formula, and then what we want to do is that's going to figure out the net present value of the cash flows. But what we want to do is we want to make sure, since that investment happens at the very first, we don't want to discount that initial cash flow of $750. So then we want to, outside of the net present value function, we want to subtract out $750,000, and you'll see that comes out to be the exact same number that we calculated using this method up here. So for the processing mill, that's going to be, since we have 2 cash flows right here in year 4, there's 2 ways to do it. So we can do the net present value, we have our interest rate. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to copy this and move it over here. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this year 4, and then I'm just going to add that cash flow for the residual value here. So that's going to be 280,000. So you'll notice that by doing it this way, our formula is still the same. We're still at 195,864. That's going to make our net present value function just a little bit easier. So we just do NPV with our interest rate, and then our values. We're just going to grab our values right here, close it. That gives us our 954 we had here, and then we just subtract out 750, and that'll give us the exact same number. So 2 different ways to get the exact same number. One little tip as you're working through the problem, if you want to use this as you're going through Cengage, is we have the problem that the book is asking us to grab a present value factor, which means you're only grabbing 3 numbers, when in reality these are they keep on going. They don't just stop at 3 digits. So if you want to match up the book number exactly, and it might be the easiest if you're working through Cengage, but you want to use this template to work through, is just put in a round function on the present values, and then just round it out to 3 digits. And then we'll just take that and drag that down. So what that's going to do is actually makes our numbers less accurate, but it'll make it so it ties to what the book and what Cengage is doing just a little easier. So you'll see that it changes the net present value slightly by about $600. So this is the more accurate number, but this is going to be the number that's going to match our book a little bit closer. So technically this is the more correct way, but this might make life just a little bit easier as you're working through the homework.